Ladies and gentlemen, Old Dynamite, the voice of Bishop Promotions, here with you one more time. Standing next to me, one half of our big AKA 12 main event. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the current reigning and defending AKA professional welterweight champion. And tell you what, he has been walking tall for a long time now, ladies and gentlemen. You won the strap a few fights ago. Haven't found anybody that can take it from you yet. How does that feel once you get that championship gold around your waist? Now you're the prey. You're no longer the hunter. Everybody's vying for you and what you have. How does that motivate you to get ready for each and every fight, Steve?
I think mainly because I think there's more of an expectation for me to win, and I have to probably live up to that. So it just, I try to just keep my head down, keep humble, and just remember to put in, some hard work at the gym, and take every fight as it comes on, study my opponents, and just same old, I train different things according to, depending on which opponent I get, but same effort all the time, a lot of hard work. So yeah, I think pretty much just that expectation, that there's more of an expectation for me to win, and I have to try to live up to that. So all that faith that everybody puts on me. So yeah, just been diligent like always at the gym, and trying to win my fights.
And he has done a lot of that, ladies and gentlemen, like DJ Khaled. All he does is win, 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 baby. Steve, they call him the average, but he is far from it. A top-notch, world-class athlete in every respect of the word, ladies and gentlemen, and quite the winner. We've seen you get the wins in the Legacy organization. We've seen you get the wins. You are the current reigning champion here. You're one of the top welterweights in the country. Anything you want to say before we close this out tonight here tonight?
Man, just big thank you to everybody that's been supporting me so far. Big thank you for AKA, always having me back, and it's awesome to fight for them. So I'm honored to be back here in their cage again.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, fighting out of Longview, Texas, by way of La Ceiba, Honduras. Watch him later on tonight. The welterweight champion here at AKA, our big main event, Steve the Average Jones. The challenger vying for the Bishop Promotions welterweight championship here at AKA 12, Josh Lee. Welcome back to Shreveport, my friend. Welcome to the historic Hirsch Coliseum, and welcome to your title shot here at AKA 12. How does it feel, Josh?
Feels great, man. I'm happy to be back, humbled. Can't wait to get in there and have some fun.
Now, Josh, as the old cliche goes, I hate when guys do it, but I'm going to do it myself. It's been about a year and a half since you fought. Here comes ring rust. Do you feel like you have any working in this fight tonight?
I don't feel like I have any at all. I've had a long layoff before, came back, felt great coming back. I'm ready to go. Not worried about any ring rust.
Now, you're coming in tonight with a very impressive professional record, 9 wins, 6 defeats. When you started this camp, came in 214, 215. Now you're down to a lean, mean, ready, and rocking 170 pounds. Josh, how does it feel at this point in your career to get another title shot for a big promotion like AKA?
It feels great. I'm honored. I've been fighting for almost 13 years. It feels great to be able to step in there to fight for anything, but when you add a title to it, it's just that much more. So I can't wait to get in there.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, he is chomping at the bit, and he will get his opportunity in our big main event here tonight. AKA 12, Josh Lee, challenger for the welterweight championship.
Boy, Dynamite gets excited about these things.
Hey, main event action. We're all excited.
Old Stan Lee giving them last-minute instructions. Boy, Dynamite, tell us about it.
And that, boys and girls, is how you pop them for the big main event. Here we go, 2 wayward welterweights set to go to war for the AKA welterweight championships. The 7-1 Steve, the everything but average Jones, taking on the 9-6 Josh Lee. Josh, coming off a nearly 2-year layoff, started his camp at 216 pounds, and now here he is, the lean, mean, ready, and rocking 170 in there with the bad boy of Team 515, Steve Jones.
Looking good thus far, both guys. Good high hands, kind of probing it, seeing what's going to happen, trying to see if their opponent has any tells.
Josh Lee, a seasoned veteran, he has had some wars inside that cage over the years, Danger, but I tell you, it has been hard to find anyone to stand toe-to-toe with Steve Jones. He is on a tear right now here, the reigning AKA welterweight champion. We've seen him very successful at the Legacy Fight Series. Steve is a game opponent, and it's going to be hard to take that strap from around his waist.
Josh Lee doing a decent job there as the exchange got kind of chippy. I think he actually was the one who got the better of that combination. Nice work thus far. Both guys kind of standing in front of each other and taking what the other one dishes out.
And you see just from physical size, Josh Lee the bigger, the thicker of the two athletes, but Steve Jones a physical specimen at 170 pounds.
You can really tell that Josh Lee is physically strong as they clinched up because, yeah, obviously we know that Steve Jones is a powerful guy. And
you know, it goes back to the old thing my grandpa and my dad used to always tell me, you know, when you're sitting in the bar, it's that loudmouth you don't have to worry about. It's that quiet guy in the corner you better not mess with. And I tell you, Steve Jones, as quiet as they come, but inside the cage, you talk about turn that switch, turn into an animal. He brings out the beast mode every time he's inside of there, guys.
yeah, I love to watch Steve Jones work. He's an excellent fighter, but gotta give Josh Lee his due here. He's doing a decent job against young Steve Jones.
He's doing a very good job. I mean, you know, we expected Steve Jones to come in and just kind of be the aggressor and kind of dominate it, but Josh Lee's is, for the most part, has negated almost everything Steve's thrown at him. I mean, there's some back and forth here, but nothing to really decide someone's, quote, winning this fight.
Well, Josh in his professional career has more wins than Steve has total professional fights.
That is true. There's an experience level that's hard to combat.
Yes, sir.
Steve Jones probing with the jab cross. Big looping overhand right. And it looks like Josh Lee's really going for it here, kind of getting a little more comfortable, and Steve has to answer and gain some respect back here. Nice feint.
Good head moving on the back out that time by Steve Jones.
They both have a lot of respect for each other as far as their power. Neither one wants to fully commit.
I think at this point they've both tasted it, so they're like, that hurt.
Yeah, when you're serving up those gourmet knuckle sandwiches, they don't taste as good as they sound, boys. And now you see Steve Jones standing there, both men toe-to-toe, a little trepidatious to fire away those weapons. Back to what Danger alluded to, they both got a taste. Now neither one willing to commit and jump into the pocket and make that early mistake here in this 3-round championship fight.
Steve Jones with a nice little three-piece there.
He has a weird little, like, hook right cross thing he did, like almost trying to, like, finger it in behind his glove, hit that ear or something.
One thing I'm noticing about Steve Jones, look how he shifts his weight from the back foot to the front foot when he is ready to strike. So good job with the weight distribution, but could that be a tell, Danger, if you're Josh Lee watching him shift that weight before he strikes?
Yeah, I mean, if you can time it, you certainly can. If obviously the heavier you are on that front leg, it leaves you susceptible to certain attacks, but Steve doing a good job of I see what you're saying, kind of being heavy on that front leg, but he's returning the weight back to being in between his legs, nice and balanced. And if he can step, as he catches Josh Lee trying to step on him, he needs to spring back and counter with volume.
Good exchange that time.
I'm really excited to see, you know, somebody like Josh, who's probably known or expected to be like this big jiu-jitsu guy, out here going toe-to-toe, throwing punches back, and holding his own. I really appreciate that.
Looking pretty clean too, but as we're seeing, it seems like Steve is finding his range and finding his mark, and as the fight's wearing on, Steve is finding better punches and you know, having cleaner work.
So you see Steve really keeping those hands a little busy, trying to keep Josh off balance, not showing him what's coming at him. Josh Lee trying to keep that head covered up, don't want to take too much punishment from Jones. Jones very crisp with the strikes, a very high-level striker is Steve Jones. Josh Lee doing a great job with defense and really holds his own with the young lion there. Josh Lee came out looking good in the first round, guys.
Absolutely, Josh Lee looked nice. You kind of saw Steve there kind of pulling it out of him there at the end, making Josh Lee react to his first read and then giving him a look at something else. I saw Steve Jones show an uppercut, go to a hook. Right there, he feinted a jab and then stabbed a jab. That's the type of stuff that you're going to need to do to get Josh Lee off of his game, because right now he's kind of just covering and blitzing back and having success with that.
Dynamite, who do you give that round to?
I tell you, it's a hard round to call, guys. It really is. I would not envy the judges in the position they are right now in the first round. But I got to say, I've almost got to let that one go. I'm leaning a little towards Josh Lee in the first round.
I could see it going to Josh Lee, but for my money, Steve Jones landed the cleaner shots and you know, was kind of definitely the more technically sound fighter. Could have gone either way.
Yeah, and this might come in one of the cases of Steve being the incumbent. Does Josh have to overcome that and do more than's expected, or does Steve have to do more?
If history tells us anything, I would say, yeah, absolutely. You got to come out here and take it from the champ.
Yeah, you've always got to factor in that championship advantage, and you got to think the judges see that as well. Always leaning a little towards your champion. Now, I wonder if Josh Lee going to try to start to incorporate maybe some level changes, get a takedown here, work in some of that jiu-jitsu that we know he's very fantastic at on the ground.
I think that would be the smart thing to do, because right now you see Steve is really in tune to the striking battle. He's got his hands nice and tight. One takedown attempt would change up everything. Nice low kick. Yeah, beautifully set up. Hook to low kick, classic.
And so much of that punching power from Steve Jones, you see how massive his shoulders are. Again, he's a physical specimen out there, but the power he can generate just from his upper body and those strikes, very, very dangerous. I'm surprised we've seen no takedown attempts whatsoever from Josh Lee. He's willing to stand up here, stay in the pocket and exchange with Steve Jones thus far.
Yeah, and you got to commend him for having the cojones to do such a thing, but I think it would just be a smart move for him to switch it up, make Steve Jones think about it, like, yo, we ain't just kickboxing, homeboy.
Yeah, I mean, I think they had a little bit of exchange on and off the fence with some over-under hooks, and maybe they both felt each other out and said that take entirely too much energy.
True.
I mean, I'd have to imagine that Steve Jones isn't easy to take down.
Doesn't look like it.
Good cover up by Lee, and he fires a double jab on the way out, lands two right there on the nose of Steve Jones.
You see Steve Jones just doing these subtle little
hip
motions.
switch?
Yeah, it's just small things like showing him, I might kick you, coming back with the hands. Now we're seeing Steve Jones really get loose, but again, you got to be careful. Josh Lee's wound up, ready to swing back.
Nice exchange that time. Knee comes up from Josh Lee, and Steve Jones is going to shrug him off.
I'm honestly really impressed with Josh Lee, how he's able to stand in there and exchange in the striking realm. I really felt that Steve Jones would have a huge advantage striking, and thus far, Josh Lee holding his own, more than holding his own.
Now, this is not the fight I expected to see. I expect to see a lot more time on the fence, just kind of pressing each other up and feeling each other out. I did not expect them to stand in the middle of the cage and just go back and forth.
Steve Jones probing with that jab. Let's see if he's trying to set up that big right hand of his. Sometimes you'll see him probe with the jab, feint with the jab, and then
nice
change it up.
head work.
Yeah, Josh Lee trying to find an opening there. Let's see if he can land some big blows. And Steve Jones, they would just duck under and back out.
If you'll notice, Steve Jones every now and then will shake his head in like a yes position when his corner talks to him. He's in the middle of a fight. You can tell he's very cognizant of what his corner's yelling at him. He's really bringing that in. That's huge.
Super in tune.
I mean,
again, looking great, looking great. Both fighters. Ooh.
Nice.
Just under 2 minutes to go here in round number two, and thus far, Steve Jones dominating round two, landing many more strikes to Josh Lee.
That body shot's definitely going to have to make Josh start deciding which way he wants to defend.
Josh Lee holding his own. If I was Steve Jones, I would return back to those low kicks. I mean, it hasn't really looked like Josh has countered or checked or answered that low kick in any way, so why not keep tenderizing that bad boy?
Absolutely. It would definitely pay off next round if it goes that far.
Josh Lee got those hands up, protecting right there. Steve Jones pawing with the left, loading up that big right. Comes low with the right, lands two. Lee go over the first takedown of the match. Steve Jones is going to throw him off to the side. How impressive was that out of Jones?
Now at this point, it's a little too late for Josh to want to start incorporating those takedowns as he's worn down from the striking battle. I think early on, he may have had the mustard to push forward, get his hands together and score a takedown. Now it just looks like he's a little compromised.
Well, the problem is now I think he's going to have to eat one or two to get that takedown attempt, and that's really going to add up quick.
Sharp jab from Steve Jones. Continues to work. it's small, subtle motions that are making these shots add up and land big. I mean, it's the feint. He shows him the hook. He comes with the uppercut. He shows him the uppercut. He turns it into a straight right. Really impressive. Small, subtle work right there. He just shows him the hip, thinking he's going to kick him. Josh Lee reacts, and Jones jabs him.
No, I think you nailed it. He's just throwing the punches from so many different angles that there's no consistency.
Back to that low kick.
Wow, Steve Jones just smooth as silk out there right now, guys. Really looking good.
And those low kicks, I think only 3 of them have landed, but they have been 3 damaging low kicks. And you can see Josh Lee's movement compromised. And listen, again, we commend Josh Lee for fighting tough and standing up and being a dog, but now it's clear that he's kind of fallen behind in this battle.
Oh, yeah, that first round was definitely a toss-up. Could have gone either way, but the second round, that was Steve's round.
Yeah, sometimes you got to remember what brought you to the dance, guys, and stick to your strengths. And I think Josh Lee might have missed that opportunity already in this fight.
Absolutely, but you got to think Josh has been working hard, obviously, on his striking. He wants to come out here and showcase that a little bit.
Hey, and you know what? There's something to be said for putting on a good show. I mean, don't get me wrong. Nobody wants to lose, but coming out here and fighting and putting yourself out there the way he is, and he's got a puncher's chance like anybody else.
And yeah, Josh no small man by any doubt, so he's got power behind those punches. Always with the puncher's chance. And look, if he can score the takedown, there's always the chance of getting that late round submission. So Josh Lee definitely not out of the fight by any means thus far. Definitely behind in the points, I think, though, fellas.
I would agree, and it seemed like Steve Jones was catching some momentum there at the end. Josh Lee would need something big here. Early on, he needs to push forward, make it happen now. Great scrap, both guys.
And again, we start in that familiar standing position. You see Josh Lee circling to his right. Steve Jones got the center of the cage, forcing him to find the angles of attack.
I hear members of the crowd yelling for Josh to take him down.
Good idea.
Let's see if he follows their instructions.
Well, most of those out in the crowd got to see he's losing his striking battle in the second round. Look at the strength of Steve Jones.
Very nice by Steve to just stuff and counter. Good head pressure, using the fence to his advantage.
I shoot, I score, you shoot, I score. That was very nice. Josh Lee changing levels. Steve Jones double underhooks.
You can tell he's really been working his wall work here. Really been working it.
I tell you, Steve Jones is still a young fighter. As far as his career goes, the potential for him is still so high, and he's accomplished so much already. I mean, the future is bright for this young man.
Absolutely. I mean, a couple fights ago that I was saying I think that I could see this young man dancing under the big lights.
He makes it.
Yeah.
The only thing that stops him is him.
The only thing I guess you got to take into consideration, though, when you get to the 170s and on the big dance, the UFC, those are pretty big guys. I mean, Steve's not small for 170, but he's going to be stepping in there with some really big men if he makes it to the big stage.
I think he'll do just fine. I think he'll go in well-conditioned and able to handle it.
The pro Josh Lee crowd trying to will their fighter into victory. He's in a tough spot now, but
hey, and he's not quitting by any means. He is fighting. He's trying to force a position where he can work. It's just hard when you have the fence on one side and his heavy hips and then a random elbow.
Just merciless as Steve Jones here.
Yeah, I know Josh Lee's a great grappler too. He needs to grab an underhook here, and this is half guard. This is a position we're familiar with. We got to take it, step by step and build through it fundamentally. Stuck in half guard, grab an underhook, build to your hip.
The problem
build to your hand.
He's got a solid overhook at the moment, but I think that's actually hindering him.
That's my point exactly. And maybe he's not taking as much damage because he's got that overhook, but he's holding himself down. He grabs an underhook, he creates a wedge. He
even worse, I think he's holding Steve down, and that's
holding Steve on top of him.
That's where Steve wants to be anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you. At some point in time, you got to let go of that hook right there, guys, and really move. I mean, you got 2 minutes left to work here in the round.
It's going to be 2 long minutes.
See Josh Lee trying to get a little wrist control on Steve Jones to stop that left hand from popping him in the face. Jones relentless, just bringing the pressure, got that forehead down across the face of Josh Lee, keeping him very uncomfortable.
Josh continuing to really try and stop that crossface. He's insisting on that overhook. I'm not sure what he wants to work with it, but.
Listen, guys, I know this is a sticky situation, and obviously we've all been in a position where we're getting beat on. You have to attack it fundamentally. You have to go step by step, grab an underhook. Josh Lee has this, he's kind of doing this knee shield guard thing, which is fine, but you have to free that bottom leg. You have to start building up so that you can get back to your feet.
Agreed. As I said, the Jess Henry fight, like at some point you're going to have to do something you don't want to do. Otherwise, you're just fighting to not lose.
Yeah. And I think, there are small moral victories in this fight for Josh Lee. He's fought tough. He's done well, but, this is still a winnable, it's a winnable fight.
And now you see Steve Jones like a rabid Wolverine. I mean, he is all over Josh Lee, not allowing him to do anything.
Steve did get a burst of energy from somewhere. He upped the pace this last minute.
And you hear the crowd still cheering on Josh Lee. They're hoping for something here at the end of this fight. 30 seconds to go, third round of this welterweight war. Our big AKA 12 main event, Steve Jones and Josh Lee doing it big time here in Shreveport.
And Steve Jones really going for it and trying to finish, but
he does. He wants to finish. I don't think it's going to happen. Josh is not going to give up. He's not going to quit. He's going to fight to the bell.
There's our 10-second clapper.
I love it, though. I love it, getting everything he's got left. Great job, Josh Lee, Steve Jones.
Nice work from both these competitors. Good stuff. Josh Lee hanging tough, fighting hard.
Yeah, I think Dynamite said earlier he's taken about a 2-year break since his last fight.
It's wild.
Steve Jones is not the first fight I want back after a 2-year break.
Yeah, definitely not. And to go in there tit for tat, stand up with him, and have some success too. I mean, like I said, Josh Lee, there are some moral victories in this fight, but again, we got to think Steve Jones. Man, I really think this guy could do it under the bright lights. I like him.
I do. I think the crowds like him. I think
Ladies and gentlemen, after 3 rounds of one hell of a fight, we are going to the judges' scorecard. Ladies and gentlemen, all 3 judges have seen and scored this fight the same way. Therefore, declaring your winner by unanimous decision and still AKA welterweight champion. Here is Steve, the Average